speaking with Golden Globe winning composer Alex Ebert, who burst onto the composing scene with last year's score to J.C. Chandor's All Is Lost, which won the Golden Globe for Best Score. This year he reunited with J.C. Once again for the critically acclaimed A Most Violent Year, which is a fantastic film and score. Alex is also the lead singer and songwriter for the bands I'm a Robot and Edward Sharpe and the Magnetic Zeros. Alex, thanks so much for your time today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So to start, I would love to know kind of, why did you decide on music as your career path, and kind of what led you to film composing, all of it kind of at this point?
Well, I loved music from, as most kids do, and loved recording and singing the music that I found. The first recording, I think, was of me at about age 5 doing the soundtrack for Stand By Me a cappella. I lost that tape. It's the only material possession I truly am sad that I've ever lost. But yeah, I mean, I just was into it, and then I got into film around the age of 14 and wanted to make movies, and dropped out of college to sort of pursue that. And then just accidentally got back into music, and then that sort of took over. Started I'm a Robot, and then that was that really until suddenly I got a call saying, "Do you want to meet this guy who's making a movie with Robert Redford, and he's going to be out at sea, and there's no dialogue." And so it was one of those amazing calls to get out of the blue.
So how did did you know JC beforehand, or did he just know of your work from your songwriting and stuff like that, or how did you guys kind of meet?
The story goes, as told by my agent, that that JC came to him and said, "I want John Williams to score it," and and Amos Newman, my agent, said, who wasn't my agent at the time, said, "Well, okay, but why don't you take a look at some of these? What about, a musician who's not really a composer?" And, sorry, let me put you here. A musician who's not really a composer. I handed him a few artists' albums, and mine was among them. And JC kind of picked me.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, I guess the rest is history.
I mean, I guess something clicked there because you're back working with them again for A Most Violent Year, and I really did love the film. It almost feels like it's from a different era. And so what were kind of the initial conversations that you had with JC? Like, what did he want from you, I guess, as the composer, and kind of what process did you want to take with him?
Well, initially he thought that maybe the movie was going to be, as he said, a needle drop movie game. It's just a bunch of songs that he sort of mined out of the era, and then I guess halfway through filming he changed his mind and thought it needed a score. So I kind of got a call halfway through the process, read the script, and again he gave me plenty of rope, sort of swing around on. So I gave him a bunch of different ideas to start, and we kind of started with a very broad palette, and then it just sort of started narrowing down as we went along.
And so kind of, what about the film really kind of drove your music? I found that the character of Abel was such a fascinating kind of character, but I mean there was a lot going on. The time era that was taking place in, the editing, the cinematography. I mean, what was the first thing that you really looked at that really kind of like, okay, I'm starting to get ideas about what this score needs to be?
Well, I guess when I saw the first cut, the full first cut, which was about 3 hours, and I realized that this movie was a character study about Abel and this sort of entrenched, meditative sort of capitalist journey that this guy was sort of, hyperbolically focused on. And I found that sort of fascinating, that in conjunction with his sort of moral superiority complex. made for this really interesting character. And so it was sort of about getting into that, bringing his atmosphere into our atmosphere, and then also providing him with a calling card or with a theme that sort of spoke to his the ominous the ominity, if you will, of his ambition really being in control of him,
Mm-hmm.
And what that might bring to the table for other people, and the lives it may turn over.
And the entire time, I don't know, I just got this kind of Once Upon a Time in America vibe, and I mean that in like the best way possible. I mean, did you ever go back and look at films of that era to see how they were shot or how they were scored?
No, I didn't. Although it's funny you say Once Upon a Time in America, because I actually, without thinking of the fact that I was scoring this movie, I did watch a piece of that. But no, I didn't go back and reference anything, although there were references in my mind left over from when I had seen some movies of that era, 1981, like Scarface, and even JC had the reference of Jan Hammer and all of the score and sounds for the hell is that TV show, Miami Vice.
Yeah.
So, and I didn't end up listening to any of that, but I did keep that in mind.
And so, I mean, your process. I'm just like, kind of what do you do? A lot of experimentation, or do you kind of have it boiled down to a structure, just kind of starting off with a theme and building from there? I mean, kind of what's your process when you are trying to throw that first step forward on this film?
Wow. Yeah, I kind of just start feeling it out. With All Is Lost, I just read the script and started writing before I saw anything. With this, I watched the movie before I started, and I don't know. I think it's about getting into the minds of the characters and feeling what can be brought out. To me, this story is all about subtext. Sure, it's a story about a guy who wants to sell more heating oil than anyone else, but the subtext and the context of the movie, like the fact that it's during the height of the Cold War, the fact that it is one of the most violent years in New York, and that there's being born right around that time an immense counterculture that's sort of self-destructive in response to all this, punk rock and this sort of artistic culture that's being born that sort of has had it, and I wanted to involve all that somehow, and not just sort of go along with the bell, but actually sort of unravel some of that subtext.
Absolutely, and it's I don't know. I love the way that the score is layered and the sound design, and how the whole film's sound design is so. I mean, it's so mind-bogglingly good. I mean, the way you guys use the sound of an airplane or during that chase, the train. I mean, how do you? I mean, what was the spotting session like? I mean, how do you? Because the film is kind of sparsely scored. The music is never overbearing. Was it a challenge to find where the music should exist and where you needed to step back and let the sound design kind of become the score itself?
I mean, yes and no. I played around with overscoring, but I mean, there's plenty of occasions where I sort of demanded that my music be out, or same with All Is Lost, where I watched the first cut without my music, and I thought, well, this doesn't need music. I sort of dig it just like this. And, so it's a fine balance. You don't want to disrupt that realism that exists when there's not music, but at the same time, you want to achieve some of that cinema that occurs when music does sort of enter in and has the potential to heighten unravel subtext. You know.
You're right. And another pretty notable thing about this film is the end title song. You know, how did that come to be, and what really influenced that?
Yeah, that was when it was time for a sort of cultural reactive dose to hit the film. You know, he had just been going on and on about how sort of moral and right, taking the most right path, and all this right after, you know, the tragic figure of Julian sort of has his farewell, and the whole thing just kind of reeks of ignorance, and so it was time to sort of have this this sort of cultural reaction, and so yeah, that's when the synthetic drums and the sort of the self-destruction and the unwillingness to be sort of a culprit and go along with the bell suddenly comes out and speaks out, and gets a bit ugly, and yeah, it was a really an amazing thing to do. I wrote that song not independently of the movie, but actually wrote it to picture. So
oh wow,
I started the drums right at the end of that speech, and then continued to sing over the titles, just sort of keeping Julian in mind, and keeping that reactive sort of spirit in mind the whole time. Yeah, it was sort of a profound experience for me, because I didn't write any of the lyrics down, but nor did I have a melody preconceived. I just had a beat machine and laid down a bunch of percussion, and then just started singing, and without any real idea of where I was going to go or what I was going to say. So, like in those moments where I keep dragging out the word America on and on and on without ending the phrase, I had no idea I was going to do that. That was just a single take sort of thing, and I would punch myself in as soon as I'd screw up. But yeah, it was a pretty fun experience.
Wow, well, that's awesome. That's really interesting. And so now that you've scored a couple films, you know, what is your thought on the whole film scoring process so far? Does it allow you to do things that you weren't able to do in songwriting?
Yeah, it sort of demands that you're of service to both the song and the picture, whereas pop music is sort of can sometimes be in service to you, and I think that it's nice, and to the general idea and the general form of pop music, verse chorus, and as opposed to dwindling away or disappearing when it actually wants to. So yeah, you're entirely of service to both the song or the piece of music and the picture, and that's a very liberating place to be.
And to wrap up, I always like to ask composers, if you could score any film ever made, pretending the original score never existed, which film would you choose?
Boy. Yeah. Oh God.
Like what would be your favorite playground to play in, type of thing?
Well, yeah, I mean, like a 2001 or a Once Upon a Time in America, or a Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Any of those sort of like grand, Lawrence of Arabia, like anything that sort of has this epic space within it that is really just begging for melody.
Wow, that's an awesome answer. I love that.
Yeah.
Those are, Once Upon a Time in the West is my favorite film, so, I love...
Yeah, Once Upon a Time in the West, actually, is what I meant. Yeah. That whole scene at the beginning at the train station.
Yeah.
And all that space that Leone is allowing, and it's just, I mean, what a playground.
And that's what it really reminded me of you and JC's work, because you have that kind of down to a T, that balance of sound design and scoring, and it was I really loved the film. It was really great work. So.
Oh, good, man.
But Alex, thank you so much for your time, and congratulations on the film. And it was such a pleasure to talk to you today.
All right, thank you.